All right, good evening. Before we begin the regular city council meeting, open session, I'd like to remind members of the audience that anyone wishing to speak during public comment must obtain a number card from the city clerk. If you did not obtain a number and wish to speak, please proceed to the back of the room and city staff will issue you a number card. Lining up during public comment will not be permitted, and each speaker should remain in their seat until their number is called. The time clock will begin when you begin your comments. Per the city's council meeting rules and for fire safety regulations, all persons shall remain seated unless addressing the council or entering or leaving the chambers. Standing in the aisles or along the walls is prohibited. There's overflow seating available in the lobby. If there are no available seats in the chambers, please proceed to sit in the lobby. I will now call to order the regular city council meeting, open session. Time is now 6:36. City Clerk Duarte, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Frometa?
Present.
Councilmember Ortiz?
Present.
Councilmember Trujillo is excused. Mayor Pro Tem Pemberton?
Present.
And Mayor Sosa.
Present. Thank you. And now let's welcome for the invocation Greg Welch, Chaplain of the Downey Police Department.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, yet another beautiful day that you've bestowed upon us in a country that you have blessed beyond imagination. As well as the city of Downey, Lord, we thank you so much for your presence here tonight, because when two or more are gathered in your name, you are there where you always be. Lord, we have so much to be thankful for. The folks in front of me and the folks behind me. Hardworking citizens, hardworking volunteers and council people, virtually volunteers, Lord, because it's a thankless job sometimes. We ask that you bless each and every one of them in the hard work that they do, as well as our citizens with the fervent ability to be here tonight and to support our great city as citizens. Our police and fire, Lord, are always there at our beck and call, Lord, to protect us. They say yes every time they put that uniform on. And Lord, lest we forget, that is what a blessing looks like. In your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Greg. Now let's welcome for the flag salute, Girl Scout Troop 5011.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Put your right hand over your heart. Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's hear it for the Girl Scouts, guys.
Did you bring your cookies?
Mayor, if I have a point of privilege, I do want to recognize my niece, Cora Marroquin. Hello, Girl Scout. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. All right. Speaking of Girl Scout cookies, now's the time for council member announcements, request future agenda items, conference and meeting reports. We'll go to MPT Pemberton.
Go to the left this time. Let's go.
What? Well, we haven't even started. We're already, really?
Thank you, Mayor Sosa.
Yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Downey City Council meeting tonight. In the attendance that we did this week, my colleague and I attended TLC, the annual 5K run at the Barbara Riley Center. and there were 1,500 in attendance. It was sold out. And TLC, in case you don't know what they do, they are a nonprofit organization with Downey Unified, which provides a number of services free of charge to families who have students in our schools. Health services, emergency food, housing assistance, and counseling are just some of the areas that give support to struggling families or single-head household parents. It's run by a great staff. I want to give a shout out to Luz Perez, who is the director of the organization. The consent calendar has a number of items that I just wanted to call out. We see the consent calendar, it moves quickly, but I'd like to let the residents know and those listening, there's a very in-depth background information, a report. I'd like to thank all the different areas of staff that provide that. We go through that ahead of time so we can quickly move on it. One of the items tonight that we will vote to approve is we received a grant for safety improvements. Upgrading crosswalk signage with flashing beacons for high visibility at 2 schools, St. Pius Matthias on Gardendale and OLPH on Downey Avenue. So it's going to go out for bid, and the work would commence in summer of 2025. And these are high traffic speed areas, and you know what the beacon light is. So that's one of the items. On number 6, Barbara J. Riley Center has completed their HVAC installation, so it's going to be cool at the senior center. 2 items, Downey Police Department is upgrading their firearms and police radios from ADJOURNMENT funds. And we're also purchasing a new off-road pickup for the fire department. This truck that they've been using was over 10 years old and budgeted from Measure S as well. We always support our police and fire, and as you know, in recent issues that we've had last month with other cities, we want to have the best equipment for you. We're there to support you. In number 10 is a Downey Hazard Mitigation Plan, and it was required by the Federal Disaster Management Act. This lengthy and detailed mitigation report, I should pull it out, it's probably 500 pages, was completed by a team of 30 people consisting of city staff, managers, police, fire, the school district personnel, hospital staff, and personnel, as well as representatives of neighboring cities from Norwalk and Paramount. So in lieu of the recent disasters, this plan couldn't be more on point to address any hazards that Downey faces. So thank you to everybody participating and for staff in preparing this very detailed report we have tonight. A third reminder I'd like to say is do not park within 20 feet of a marked or unmarked crosswalk. This is at the corner of a street. Assembly Bill 413 is in effect. Cars block the view for motorists at intersections presenting a safety hazard. And our police have been out and proactively, at the request of residents also, writing citations for cars that park at the edge of the street, which block visibility for drivers and or pedestrians walking. A thank you to Public Works and Park and Rec for coordinating the TLC 5K. It was orchestrated beautifully, as it always is. And I know there's a lot of staff time to set up, maybe starting at, 4 or 5 a.m., and then they have to take it all down. I have a save the date. So attention seniors, this is senior night. Attention seniors, this Friday at the Barbara Riley Center is an open house from 5 to 8. And they will be showcasing all the different activities that are available. You can get a tour and be amazed at all that they have to offer. It also says, I found this in the paper, a free giveaway for the first 100 patrons who show up. So the BJR Center is at 7810 Quill. Thanks, Jason and staff. And we also have a couple save the dates. The sports leagues are getting underway. We have quite a few in Downey. Opening day this Saturday for Downey Ponytail Girls Fast Pitch Softball, my old famous sports league for my girls. Northwest Little League this Saturday, March 8th, opening day for it's also Northwest Little League. And on March 8th, opening day for West Downey Little League. I know we will all be there in force. March 7th is the Women's Empowerment Conference at Rio Hondo. There will be 4 excellent speakers. RSVP to the Downey Chamber. Thank you, Downey Chamber. Tickets are still available. And we have a couple casino nights, save the date. Seroptimist is on April 4th. Assistance League on May 10th. We have a Gangs at a Downey luncheon with a guest speaker. Our new Deputy DA, Nathan Hockman, will be speaking. That will be on March 13th at the Rio Hondo Event Center. And for information on that, downeygood.org. One follow-up or inquiry, I know last year we put an application for the Vietnam Wall. I'd like to know maybe where we are, or how long they said that it would take for us to be selected if we're not selected. So let's see where we are on the Vietnam Wall and if we might have it this year. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, we'll give a quick update on that if you give it a second.
Yeah, so we are bringing back an item next meeting. There was a selection made with the vendor, and so we'll be brought forth with the vendor, the date, and the appropriation needed for the project. So it'll be next meeting.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. MPT, just a clarification. So the Northwest Downey Little League opening day ceremonies, you said March 8th. Is it March 1st or March 8th?
This Saturday is
March
Ponytail
1st.
and Northwest.
So this is March 1st? Yes, for Northwest.
Yes, and March 8th is West Downey Little League.
So March 1st for Northwest Downey, March 8th for West Downey. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
All right, I'll move on to our my far left, Councilmember Ortiz.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Well, that's all my comments for today. No, I'm just kidding. It's great to see everyone here. I don't have much to report. I do want to give a shout out to Gallatin PTA, who awarded me a service award this past week. It was honestly a beautiful surprise. They told me I was going to award a student, but they awarded me. So it just gives me a reminder of why I ran for office. So I just want to say thank you to them. I also want to give a shout out to our police chief and Roger. There were some incidences that were happening in Gardendale, and thank you so much for the quick response. The resident really felt it, so I just want to say thank you for helping the resident out. I do have a save a date as well. We do have a neighborhood watch block captain meeting on March 4th. So if you do want to get involved or want to be part of something great in our city, I highly recommend that you come and do RSVP to Stephanie Arroyo, who is our block captain chair, neighborhood watch. So coordinator, thank you. With that, I conclude my comments for today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Ortiz. Now, Councilmember Fermetta.
Thank you, Mayor Sosa. Good evening, everybody. It is always a pleasure to be here and to serve the residents of our great city. I do want to welcome some special guests we have tonight, and that is, we'll be hearing about that a little bit more, but I want to welcome our former Board of Education Director and that board member, and that is Martha SODETANI. Thank you for joining us tonight. Current board member for the Board of Education, Nancy Swenson. We also have my planning commissioner, Carrie Uva. Thank you, Carrie, for being here. And the newly appointed Public Works Commissioner, Hector Beltran. Thank you for being here. Of course, we always say hello to the Executive Director of our Chamber of Commerce, Michael Calvert. Thank you for joining us. I too do not have a lot to report. Our colleague Pemberton has done a great job at reporting for all of us, going through half the calendar. But I do want to say we had a great time as a council last February 13th when we came together to discuss our goals in our strategic plan for this upcoming year. And I always say that not only are engaged communities strong communities, but a council that is engaged and that is focused on the overarching priorities of our city, fiscal responsibility, community engagement, the pillars of this community. It is important for this council. I know that we represent combined 114,000 residents, and we receive numerous emails and phone calls, and due to our daily jobs, we can't always get to them fast enough. And everything may seem urgent and as a priority, but I do want to let our residents know that we too are trying to reprioritize and prioritize what comes in. Not everything that you request will get done. And so please don't hate us for that. We have a finite number of hours and a finite number of staff. And as I say, what has made this city a great and well-oiled machine is because every year for the past many years, we come together and we discuss what are the priorities, what are the big projects, the CPIs, the capital improvement, CIPs, capital improvement projects, and things that we really need to focus on. Other things will come, and I'm not saying that we won't address those stop signs and things that are, of course, public safety related. But I do want to level set with our residents that not everything that you ask, not every idea that you tell us we're going to implement. And I hope you're okay with that. That is our job as electeds, to hear you, but also to assess where this city goes. And so we had an excellent workshop and where we all attended, we all gave our feedback. Thank you, City Manager Bradley, for continuing this tradition for our city. And for the first time, we also had the department heads part of that session, and that was very fruitful. So thank you for that. I do want to mention a couple of things that I've said in the past, and I know Carrie, my planning commissioner, is also involved with CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team. And later in the program, under administrative reports, we will hear from the city's emergency manager, Rakti Kwok. She will give a presentation on the city's emergency preparedness and emergency operations plans. I think it's important for the city, for the community to realize that not every city has the blessing and the advantage of having an emergency manager. And the city of Downey, over the course of the last several years, has made great efforts and has gone through great lengths to make sure we have an emergency operations plan and that we discuss those hazards. So we will hear more about that. But how important is it for our residents to get involved in CERT, the Community Emergency Response Team? Because on any major emergency, and I know that while we're not on a foothill, and thankfully we were not so impacted by the E10 and Palisades fires, but earthquake is not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when. And when that occurs, our first responders are going to be dealing with other issues within our city. So as neighborhoods and community residents, it is up to us to ensure that we can take care of each other. We can take care of our families and we can take care of each other. So I do encourage you to get involved in our CERT program. And also, as was said earlier, the Neighborhood Watch Block Captain meeting is March 4th, Tuesday, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Come over and find out how you can get involved in your Neighborhood Watch program. That has been also very effective, and the reason why our city is also has a low crime rate in comparison to the rest of LA County cities. One last thing I want to mention, and I want to say thank you to the schools that have reached out to us. Many of us will be participating in Read Across America on March 14th. And again, we are here to serve you. If there's something that you need from us, please don't hesitate to reach out to all of us. One thing I would like to ask is to take a look at, we are seeing some RVs parked on the northeast side parking lot of Stonewood Center. And I know that some residents expressed some concern about that parking lot, seeing some RVs there, as well as we passed an ordinance about RV parking in our neighborhoods. And there's been some increase in the RVs parking on the streets within neighborhoods. So I just want to make sure that we tackle that. Another thing is with some increased transient activity along the Florence segment between the riverbed and Lakewood. There are residents along Florence Avenue and Florence Place that have been contacting me with concerns about increased transient activity, and there's those bushes along between the separate Florence Avenue and Florence Place, and sometimes there's overnight sleeping or there's other activities taking place, and the residents there don't feel safe. I do want to acknowledge a couple of residents came up last meeting to talk about a left turn signal on Lakewood and Vista del Rosa. We are talking to Caltrans. We are addressing that issue. And there's also another resident that emailed me, and I do want to say thank you to Matt Baumgartner for his quick response. And this was regarding crosswalks for Unsworth, near Unsworth Elementary. So with that, I complete my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember Fermetta. Good evening, everyone. It's good to see everyone here. I'll keep my comments short. This past weekend, I did unfortunately have to miss the TLC 5K, which I love to attend and participate in. My colleagues who went did, oh, never mind. You didn't run or walk? No? Okay, never mind, sorry.
Wow.
I'm sorry.
We're on the disabled list,
Okay.
Mayor.
I couldn't help myself, sorry.
The running challenge.
Yeah, Michael Calvert understands. He knows what I'm talking about. All right.
Oh, and I was out of town too.
Okay.
Sorry.
So I did attend the ICA conference, Independent Cities Association conference, which I proudly serve as a board member for the city of Downey. And that was just an exceptional conference. Some of the topics that we discussed, have pretty much elected officials from up and down California, mostly in Southern California, that participated in that. So it was, some of the hot topics we discussed were economic development, LA County Measure A, and Local Solutions Fund, possible functional zero homelessness. It's pretty ambitious, but it was great to hear some of the tactics they're going to be implementing over the next few years, next few months. New emerging policing technologies, fire and emergency prevention and response, and the 2028 Olympics. So good to stay tuned on more information on those. We're going to stay engaged with other cities and with ICA and with contract cities as well. We got a lot of huge events coming to LA, and we need to be prepared. And we're trying to, there's going to be a lot of events coming up, so we're going to try to get some of that love in the city of Downey. So stay tuned on that. I think my colleagues covered a lot of save the dates. I will just put one out there in May. May 24th, we are looking at a Veterans Appreciation Breakfast. It'll be no cost to our veterans, and they will be served, and we're going to provide some speakers and resources for our veterans. So thank you. That'll conclude my comments, and City Manager Bradley.
Thank you, Mayor. Actually, I do have some good news I wanted to share. We were informed today, actually, if you recall, a few months ago, we brought to you our local road safety plan. And we had, as part of that, a look at the different intersections within the community that had traffic accidents and needed a little bit of improvements to improve the safety of those intersections. As you recall, we had a list of 10 projects that we were looking for funding for. We did submit those projects to the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And we were awarded today $3.5 million to do work on those corridors. So just want to say thank you to our Public Works team, Matt, Ed, and Amaka for their hard work in getting that grant information together. And we're going to be doing that project over the next year or two. So we're pretty excited to move forward with that work and do some much needed improvements in the city.
Does that cover many of the ones we requested done, or all of them?
Those are 5 projects of our 10,
5?
And so we have a couple of projects that we're already working on. So we're getting quite a bit of our work done. So thank you.
We'll wait for the review. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Thank you, City Manager. Now we have a couple of presentations. Hello again, everyone. First presentation, my Mayor's Outstanding Citizen Award, and this is going to go to Martha SODETANI. I got to build you up first. Just stand right here. Okay. Hello. All right, Martha SODETANI, Education Service and Community Leader. Martha SODETANI is known for her over 17 years of service on the Downey Unified School Board, as well as a long history of volunteer work in the community. She has served as the past president of Good Gangs Out of Downey, past president of the Assistance League of Downey, and as district executive PTA Foster Children chairperson. Martha is a current volunteer with PTA Helps, the Downey Coordinating Council, Downey Care Collaborative, the Assistance League, and the Eastern Caravan Registration Resource, among others, as well as Good Gangs Out of Downey. Additionally, Martha's background in education includes teaching classes at Cerritos and Long Beach City Colleges for prospective foster and adoptive parents in the LA County. She also served on the Foster Kinship Care Curriculum Advisory Committee at both his institutions. Martha was honored with the Protector of Children Award at the Children's Benefit Dinner last year for her outstanding dedication to children and the community. Martha is a devoted mother of 6 children, a mix of biological and adopted, and she has fostered over 10 children over the span of 8 years. She's adopted 3 children and ceased fostering only after the passing of her husband, Gordon. Prior to settling in Downey in the mid-1970s, Martha volunteered in Liga International and the Flying Doctors of Mercy, providing medical care in remote areas of Mexico. So I will say this is, off script, off the bio. I've had the pleasure and privilege of knowing Martha for many years, being in Downey, and she's an absolute gem. I'm a big fan. And Downey, as many of you know, is a very collaborative community. We have a lot of selfless givers, a lot of selfless organizations that are filled with some amazing people. And I'm not kidding when I say this. If someone were to ask me, out of all these people, and those who know me know that I've been involved in the community for a long time, if I can name the top 5 people, top givers and selfless individuals in this community, I'd have to think about that, but Martha would be one of them easily. Easy. So I now present you Martha SODETANI. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I'm happy to be here in these chambers where I see the 6 pillars of character on the walls. It's very nice to be here. Truly, peace begins when the hungry are fed. And I just wanted to say our food banks in Downey are really filling a need. If you think of world hunger, we look at just the tip of the iceberg sometimes, and we think of death by starvation, but there are actually more deaths because of chronic, persistent hunger. And so food banks can help to fill that gap easily. Right now, what I'm working on a lot is Easter Caravan, registering boys grades 6 through 9 for time at Lake Mojave, where they stay in tents. And I had the privilege of having 30 scholarships to give to young men. And a lot of people who are volunteers donate toward this week, and some of our philanthropic groups are Good, who gives scholarships, the Police Officers Association, the Police Management Association, the Living Tree Foundation, and that's just to name a very few, because more and more we have boys that are being raised by single moms, and I know that I had that situation, and my son was left fatherless at age 9, and Easter Caravan was really the one thing that really made a difference in our lives. And so I would just ask for you to be thinking about Easter Caravan. It starts on April 12th, and I'm hoping that all of those who are registered to go will go, because it'll be so good for them. And Easter Caravan is through Downey Foundation for Educational Opportunities in partnership with Easter Caravan. Thank you so much for this.
So here's the city clerk.
Thank you.
We have a couple of recognition certificates. We have one from the Honorable Blanca Pacheco, Assemblymember Blanca Pacheco's office, and that's her
Thank
representative
you.
right there,
Ari's here. Thank you, Ari, for being here.
Ari.
Appreciate it.
And we also have this this plaque from the city of Downey,
Beautiful.
and I'll read it. In recognition of over 17 years of service and contributions to the Downey community, I should say as a school board member, you exemplify the principle of giving yourself to others through your extraordinary charitable work. Your commitment to education and community service have made a lasting impact on the lives of many. So, thank you, Martha.
Thank you, Hector.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Oh, yes. Okay. This is my daughter, Melissa, who went to Price, Griffiths, and Warren. My granddaughter, Kennedy, they live in Orange, and my son, Gordon, who went to Price, Griffiths, and Warren.
Let's hear it one more time. Welcome. All right, for our second presentation, we have a certificate of appointment, Hector Beltran to the Public Works Committee, District 4, and I'm going to call upon my colleague, Councilmember Fermetta, to say a few words.
Good evening again, everybody. And let me put on my eyes. I want to welcome Hector Beltran. He has been a resident of Downey for many years, and he is the co-founder of the academy, the Jiu-Jitsu Academy in kickboxing. You might have seen it on Downey Avenue or the one on Gallatin in Lakewood. As council members, we have the opportunity to engage with our residents and invite them to be part of to serve in various commissions. And with an opening in District 4 for Public Works, I thought about inviting Hector to serve as he had served under former Mayor Roger Brosmore some years back. And Hector has been involved in the community in various ways, but also as we celebrated the 10th anniversary of the Doodalicious mural, we were reminded how his involvement with Downey Arts Coalition, and in fact, if you look at the mural on the bottom right hand, you see Hector's name there as well. And I know that it is important for all of us to have individuals that love this community and that want to serve and give back. Recently, also, Hector has been giving some classes to our law enforcement officers, and we're just grateful for his involvement in our community. Without further ado, Hector, welcome to Public Works once again. Come on up if you want to say a few words.
Hello, everybody. Thank you once again. It's a great honor to be able to serve my community. I've grown up in District 4. I went to Gallatin, St. Mark's, Griffiths, Warren High School, and go Bears. And I pretty much never left Downey. I love my community, and that's why, there's so many people growing up where, I saw a lot of people leave Downey as soon as they graduated high school. And you know what? I said, I want to go the other direction. I want to set roots and I want to serve my community. Found something that I really felt passionate about. And now I get to have the honor of helping a lot of people, changing lives. And I'm just grateful for this opportunity to serve, because I think that's at the heart of who we are as a community. So thank you so much, Councilmember Prometa. And I really take a great honor in serving in this capacity. Thank you all. Thank you.
So here's your certificate. Thank you for being to serve. And here's your official pin. Another one.
Oh my gosh.
Hector, are you the same class with my daughter? Not me, but my daughter? Shelby, up here. Oh, never mind. Sorry.
The voice is back there.
Oh, yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes, Councilmember. I'm sorry, I missed that part though?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think you went to school with my daughter, Shelby.
Oh, yeah, thank you so much.
It all comes back home.
All right, now we'll move on to public hearings. There are, public hearing number 1 is to consider and discuss the transition to a 5-district election system and review draft district maps. The City Council conduct the 3rd public hearing to consider and discuss the transition to an election system consisting of 5 individual districts, including any public input. Number 2, conduct the initial review of draft district maps. And number 3, provide further direction to city staff. The hour having arrived, the public hearing is now open. The time is now 7:13. City Clerk Duarte, do you have proof of publication?
I do, Mayor.
Could I have a motion and a second to receive and file the publication?
So moved.
Second.
Please vote.
The motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you. City Manager Bradley, is there a staff report?
Yes, Mayor, our city attorney will open up the item.
Good evening, Mayor and council, members of the public. Tonight is our 3rd of 4 legally required public hearings on the upcoming changes to our election system. Over the course of the first 2 public hearings held in January, the council made the decision to transition from our current system consisting of 4 individual districts plus an at-large district to a system consisting of 5 individual districts themselves. Tonight, we're going to turn to the substance of the matter more specifically, and we're going to take a look at what those districts may look like under some different configurations. As we explained earlier, the city retained the services of a professional demographer to compose these maps in accordance with applicable state and federal guidelines. He is here with us tonight. He'll be able to answer any questions you may have and collect any feedback. Tonight, I would just add that no decision needs to be made on the selection of the maps. The council certainly can express its preference for one map or another, provide staff feedback, ask any questions. At the 4th public hearing, that's the time at which the council will actually select the map. And if there is enough clarity, we'll introduce an ordinance implementing those districts for an election that will occur, for the election to occur in September or November of 2028. Per the council's earlier direction. So without any further ado, I'll turn the podium over to our demographer, Mr. Doug Johnson, and he'll be able to answer any questions and collect any feedback. Thank you, Doug, for being with us tonight.
Thank you, and good evening.
Good evening.
So it's good to be here in person. As you may remember, I worked with the city through the 2021 adjustments to the 4 seats. That was all done virtually, so a pleasure to be here with you in person. Going to jump in. As you just heard, this is a multi-step process. This is the first of 2 hearings to discuss the draft maps. We're looking today and again on March 11th, and then selection of the map either March 11th or at a following meeting, and ultimately the map will be adopted by ordinance as it has been in the past. So in terms of drawing the maps, in order to draw the maps that we'll go through tonight, there are federal and state requirements. So federal, we have to have an equal number of people, and it is people. It's not an equal number of registered voters or eligible voters. It's people counted in the 2020 census. So essentially equal number in each district. And then we have to be sure that the maps comply with the Federal Voting Rights Act and avoid any racial gerrymandering. Neither one of those is really a big issue here. Every seat in every map I think we could possibly draw is going to be majority Latino here. So that doesn't really dictate much of the map drawing. Then we have the California criteria. You can see them listed in the middle. These are in priority order under the statute, so the district have to be contiguous. So all the pieces of a district have to touch. We have to avoid dividing neighborhoods and communities of interest as much as possible. Mm-hmm. We have to follow easily identifiable boundaries, the railroad, major roads, things like that. And then the last of the state criteria is to be compact, and the state defines that as just don't go around one group of people to get to another group of people. I should note, these are in priority orders. You can be non-compact if it's to keep a neighborhood together or to achieve some other higher priority. Then the new rule that wasn't in place in 2021 is the prohibition in the top right. The state has added this, which is we shall not draw or adopt a map for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent, a candidate, or a political party. So that's a new rule. So we just don't look at where the current council members live when we're drawing these maps. Then if you have 2 maps that are the same on all those statutory criteria, then the courts have said you can look at alternative criteria such as trying to underpopulate an area that's going to grow more than the other areas. Given the extensive list of state criteria now, we almost never get to that point. But it is something you can consider. Okay, so we've got 4 maps to walk through tonight. Each of these is kind of showing a different idea. And these are not the final maps. We're certainly open to any feedback, direction you have. And I should note that on the city's website is the ability to draw for residents to draw their own maps. And so if they like one of these ideas but want to fine tune it for your next meeting, they can do so. And what I try to draw when I'm showing you draft maps is a variety of ideas. So it's not like one and then another close one. These are trying to be from left to right field and to give you a big sense of what's possible. So the first map, this one really follows the current districts as much as possible. So A, B, C, and D, and A is entirely in current District 1, B is entirely in current District 2. And I should note, the reason for the letters is because we're not looking at where the incumbents live. Mm-hmm. But then at the end of the process, after you pick a map, we have to do the election sequence and the numbering. And it would be very confusing for a council member today in District 1 to tomorrow be in District 2. So we'll match them up at the end after you choose a map with where the council members are and how they fall out. So all the maps have letters. So this one really, what it does is it takes a piece of each current district in the middle. You can see the green dashed lines. Those are the current council lines. And so it takes the north end of A, the northeast part of B, the southern part of C, and the western part of D, and puts those together in really ends up being a downtown district. You get the downtown area going up around Cherokee Drive in that area. One of the things I should note, I mentioned the importance of neighborhoods and communities of interest. We may get more input on, especially once people see the maps of, oh, you divided this neighborhood or that neighborhood. At this point, we have some input. largely the input is, and the impression we have is there's kind of South Downey, well, way too big to be all in one seat, and even, Orange Estates. We looked at that. That's too large to be in one seat. So those aren't really building blocks we could use. But we did look at the downtown specific plan area, and then there some word of mouth and some reading about the Cherokee Drive area. So each of these maps keep those two areas undivided. Although, as you'll see, they move into different districts. They just move as undivided areas. Oh, and then the last one, Northeast Downey is the other one too that we were looking at. Again, that's by no means a comprehensive list of neighborhoods, so if residents do have concerns about a map dividing up their neighborhood, they should weigh in and let us know so we can take that into account for the next hearing. 102 is a different approach. Currently, all 4 districts can come together roughly or close to downtown as much as you can. And so these other maps are attempts to kind of keep that idea of each of the districts kind of on the outside coming into the center of town. So you can see this one, you really get a District C centered around Firestone. Very, that's as compact as you can get. It's almost a perfect square. Then you get B below it. B is very compact as well. It just has that little piece going over for population balancing reasons, where it goes over to Patton Road and crosses, Brookshire. Then A, you get a southern A, much like current one, but of course, now that there's 5 seats, they'll be smaller than the current seats. So it loses mostly the industrial and that eastern edge of it. And then E becomes east of Lakewood, and D is really the north part of town, and then a corridor coming between Downey and Lakewood, picking up downtown. So that's one idea of how you could kind of keep the seats still kind of all around the outside edge and coming into the middle. Different approach. This one really, you have really 2 districts north of the railroad tracks that are near Firestone. So C and D kind of stack on top of each other, largely along Florence. They cross Florence over there in the west just because of population balancing requirements. Then you get E that picks up the area that's east of the river, over by the 605, and then over to Woodruff. That Woodruff boundary is just trying to use as major a road as we can while still getting population balance. And then a very clear, Lakewood and the railroad tracks piece of E below. And then A and B divide up the rest, south of the railroad tracks and west of Lakewood, really coming down Downey and then jogging over a bit, just for population reasons. So as you can see, we're 3 very different maps, and that's really our goal. And as you're, and I got one more, but as you are looking at these, if you want to give direction tonight to narrow the choices down, you certainly can. If some of these don't make any sense, I always say if one of these doesn't make you say, that makes no sense at all, then I haven't given you a wide enough range of options. So we're really going for a wide range here. And then 104, 103, you notice in the north was really C underneath D as you go north. 104 is more C next to D. So we're using Downey Avenue as the boundary up until Downey curves and goes away up just short of the freeway. So D is everything east of Downey, C is everything west of Downey, D does get everything north of the freeway. Then you get a little bit different take of A and B, a different way of dividing them up, where B is everything above Imperial. So you're really using Imperial as a easily recognizable boundary there. And then E gets the area east of the river over by the 605, and then is actually the same, E is the same in this map as in 103. As noted at the bottom of each of these slides, there is the interactive review map on the city website. That's really the best place to see the details because you can enter an address and it'll zoom in, you can switch to a satellite view and really see the details of the maps through that. But those are our kind of discussion starter maps. We really are looking for your feedback, and as noted, it is a public hearing, so the public's feedback, and looking to take that. And we'd come back with any newer revised maps for the next hearing. I should note too, there was an email that came in with a very active person who submitted 8 maps. So we couldn't get those all processed and ready for you tonight, but those will be on your agenda for the next meeting as well. just to give you a sense, there are 8 different versions of the central district idea. So they're the idea of 101, but 8 different versions of that central seat. So you'll see those next time. And so we welcome any questions you may have or any comments from the public or from you.
Thank you. Thank you for that report. Do any members of the council have any questions or comments this time?
I actually do have a couple questions. I don't know if this goes directly to you for that question or to staff. Once these maps are drawn out, they will be implemented for the next election cycle, correct? So for District 4 and 2, these new maps will be drawn out for those?
The current direction, Councilmember Ortiz, is for these maps to be implemented upon the November 2028 elections. Districts 2 and 4 will be elected in November of 2026, and they would remain governed by the current boundaries.
Okay.
It was in 2028 that the new boundaries would become effective.
Okay. And I think you also answered this other question I have, but so if we have kind of a direction for you and say, let's just choose map 101 or 104, 103, and kind of give you a little direction, you can come next meeting and kind of give us a couple examples for that specific map after we give you kind of comments in regards to a certain map?
Yes, we're certainly happy to, if there are, well, I like this map, but can you adjust this a little bit, or I don't like how it cuts through this neighborhood. We can come back with different ways of doing that for the next one, certainly.
Thank you. That's the only questions I have for right now. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions, colleagues?
Comments-wise, in reviewing some of these maps, we know that it's always hard to tell residents, they don't know their districts. I like strong delineated streets, big streets, rather than cutting into neighborhoods, and this side is this district and this is not. And I found a map that it focuses more on that and keeping, in a sense, the relationship that a district is used to with a particular, say, council member of that area. Some, I think, chop it up a little bit too much from what we currently have, but I see an area here that's kind of in the middle, and I like how that is, giving a little bit of all of the areas that we have in Downey. And also, I wanted to let residents know that there are 13 categories here. There's a lot of categories on stats and demographics and socioeconomic and population and citizen and turnout and age, and so there's a lot of detail that you go through, and it looks very well balanced as it is in this presentation. And I have a opinion leaning towards something, but I don't know where we are with that.
I do. Thank you, Councilmember Pemberton. I also, I have very strong leanings towards a particular map, and I do like those very firm delineations following the big avenues. And I think what you said is important, not to break up certain neighborhoods that are known to the community. But I think this report was done very well. We did spend, I spent a great deal of time looking at each one and looking at the various guidelines, and not just the demographics, but voter turnout. And again, in all of them, they seem to have been well balanced. And but I too am leaning towards one in particular. So thank you. I don't have any questions. I think what you've provided is very straightforward, and it keeps certain neighborhoods the way they've been intended.
Okay, colleagues, any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you. I'll just note that I do agree that the easier to navigate main streets are much easier to define the respective districts. So,
can we have just one point of clarity from the city attorney? I know that we were asking of the suing party to move the implementation to 2028. Has that been approved yet, or otherwise it would be 2026 until they agree completely? Is that right?
Right.
Ordinarily, a prospective plaintiff has the right to insist upon a remedy, if you will, at the earliest possible date. That would be 2026. We have reached out to counsel for the prospective plaintiff and secured their agreement or consent, if you will, to the implementation in 2028, or at least they've indicated to me that is they are comfortable with that date.
Thank you.
Thank you. And now, go ahead.
I would just add to just a point of clarification, forgive me, to our city manager's question. It doesn't necessarily immunize the city from challenge from another prospective plaintiff if one did appear before 2028. At this point in time, we don't know of any, but that it doesn't certainly extinguish that possibility either.
Thank you, City Attorney Cap. I will now open this item for public comment. City Clerk Duarte, did we receive any written correspondence to be incorporated into the record?
Mayor, just what our consultant already mentioned, we did receive a submittal of proposed maps. However, due to time constraints, the maps will be presented for review at the 4th public hearing, but nothing else.
Thank you.
And then we have 3 speakers that have taken a number.
Okay. All right. Members of the audience wishing to address the City Council regarding the public hearing item may come up when your number is called. I will be calling yellow number cards for this item. I remind speakers that you have 3 minutes to address the City Council, and your comments must be regarding this public hearing item only. City Clerk Duarte, how many speakers have taken a number?
We have 3, Mayor.
Thank you. Speaker number 1, please come forward.
Lee Squire, Vietnamese veteran, Downey High graduate. My generation, as you very well know, we grew up during the Civil Rights Movement and the Vietnam-era War. Reviewing your report, when you use the word disenfranchised based on race and color, the word disenfranchisement was absolutely emphasized during the Civil Rights Movement. And like I said, I reviewed these different ones. When you talked about communities of interest, reading them over, it looks like you don't really have any pockets. It's more like they're all diversified throughout the 4 maps. I just like to say shortly and briefly that I actually prefer map number 1. I like the way it kind of like touches the border of the other 4. But again, when you're talking about natural boundaries on streets and whatever, you can have a little bit of a challenge there. But again, I kind of like the concept of map number 1. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Squire. Speaker number 2, please come forward.
All right, a lot of effort, a lot of work goes into this. Has anybody proven that the current system we had is deficient in any way? Why is there a need to change? Because we get a lawsuit threat? No. Why haven't you had the backbone to stand up and say our current system is good enough the way it is? Nobody has. You've turned tailed and ran from some ambulance chaser threatening you. Now we have to go through this gerrymandering. We know all what that means. But what we haven't incorporated is in our elections that there should be one of our representatives should be pushing the issue to the LA County, to our DEI supervisor, that we should have voter ID, same day voting, paper ballots. before we approve of anything different. Has anybody said anything like that to our county supervisor? No. And the reason why you haven't said anything, because you're not going to rock the boat, because you, every one of you, are big government, tax and spend liberal Democrats, and you're not going to rock the boat with Janice Hahn. And that's the ones that make policy for our voting processes. But we do have federal regulations that we need to adhere to. And voter ID is coming. Otherwise, we're going to do without federal funding. So you better come out of the darkness. We're collapsing. The state is collapsing. The county is collapsing. Cities around us are collapsing. And we know the elections are fraudulent because we don't have voter ID. We don't have paper ballots. Some of you even suggest that maybe we have illegal aliens vote in our local elections. That is unacceptable. That is completely unacceptable. And for you to even entertain that idea is pretty much telling us what is going on in the city of Downey, that some of you, with the other activities that have gone on, are basically declaring Downey a de facto sanctuary city, and it needs to stop. And you need to stand up, have some backbone, and start telling our county representative that this is unacceptable. We need to stick with the system we have, and don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Come out of your darkness, join us in the light. Thank you.
Speaker number 3, please come forward.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Faraz Akil. I'm a resident Downey. After reviewing all the 4 maps, my preferred map would be the first one, map 101. On top of having good distribution of the population in this city, I really like how the contingent boundaries are. It's very easy to visualize where you are by just looking at the map. Particularly, I'm concerned about map 102, like the D district. If you look at it, it stretches from the Telegraph Road all the way to the Downey PIH Hospital, and map 103 and 104, it stretches from the 105 freeway at Lakewood Boulevard all the way to the Honda World, where the 605 freeway at Florence Avenue is. So I think overall, the map 101 is my preferred choice, and I may also take a look at the interactive map maker, and I may make my own just to see how it is. But overall, I do like the map in general, and yeah, I hope that would be the preferred option. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion and second to close public hearing.
So moved.
Sure.
Good evening. I was just not clear as I was trying to listen about when this goes into effect and how it affects the elections, 2026 or 2028. Did I miss how that came out?
The intention is for these new district boundaries, whatever is decided, for them to become effective in the November 2028 elections.
Okay, so you had said something about doing it as expedient as possible, so that wouldn't be 2026?
That's correct. Under the current plan, it's scheduled for November 2028.
Okay, and
2028, forgive me.
2028?
Yes.
And is that solid? There's no debate about that?
That's the current direction, yes.
Okay, and that's the most current, not 2026?
The current plan is for the new district maps to be implemented in November 2028, if that's what you're asking.
Okay, so we're not deciding this in the next, you're not going to vote on this in the next meeting that we have?
The 4th public hearing will be typically the time at which the decision is made as to which maps to follow, and when the implementation is to be made on a formal basis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'll now entertain a motion second to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
The time is now 7:39, so ordered by the mayor. So unless there are any comments from the council, I'll entertain a motion in a second too.
I do have a comment. I were more of what I'm more leaning towards. I do agree with some of the speakers. I think map 101 really does, from what I see, kind of places a District 5 in the middle and kind of takes equally from all our districts. I think when you start looking into the other maps, 102, 103, 104, the districts dramatically do change. I think it's much more cleaner. And I do want to see if there's any more variations of map 101. I know you said you had received several for 101. So those are my comments. I know we said it was decided, just jumping on one of the questions, the decision for us to implement this until 2028 was because of our direction, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, and either today or the next meeting, we can decide to either implement this in 2026 or 2028, correct?
Yes, the decision does not need to be made tonight, but it has been expressed from the dais that should be the plan. But ultimately, the decision will formally be made at the 4th public hearing or later, if possible. But there are legally required 4 public hearings.
Great.
Yeah. Councilmember Ortiz, we can go either way on 26 or 28.
Yeah. Perfect. And so, just to end my comments, I think map 101 is just much more cleaner than the other 3 maps that are presented to us.
Colleagues, any other comments?
If we're going to start pulling out numbers, then I'm going to say I feel 104 is one of the cleanest by delineating large streets. It's not an unusual geometric figure in a sense. It's not a rhombex or such. It's a rectangular or a box. I do like the 104, as I said, because it's easier to tell major streets where it's being cut. It gives a nice variety of socioeconomic areas and such. And on a comment that we heard a little earlier, I've mentioned before that running for District 5 citywide is a huge undertaking. It's a huge task. And many residents may have had the opportunity but chose not to because it takes a lot of funding to run a citywide election. This at least enables residents to pick an area where they live, and it will be something that they can manage, they can campaign for. And if they don't have a lot of the sources to fund for a campaign that's citywide. So I like having 5 individual areas that make it more equitable for candidates when they're running, and that we can still get some candidates that might not have been considering running at large because of the size of the campaign budget that they would have needed. So thank you.
I do have, if I may, Mayor, I also liked 101. In fact, I initially indicated it would be a good idea to look at the creation of a 5th district right in the middle. But upon really studying this, I also see that with map 104, you have a much closer break in the way the current districts are, and it allows for, again, that right now some of the districts go over the railroad tracks, otherwise, and this one, 104 seems to be a little bit better delineated in terms of major thoroughfares. 101, having the downtown be represented by one, district solely may not be the best plan after all, considering the downtown revitalization plan. Even though we're looking at at all of the numbers here, and we look at they are spread out equally. But I tend to lean for 104, and I would like to make a motion to go in that direction if possible.
Okay. I will just, before we carry on with that motion, I'll just comment that the first version, 101, I think there's a high concentration of downtown Downey in that map. So I agree that map 104 does offer a lot of clear breaks for districts. And I also think 103 does that somewhat as well. So if I had to choose between the two, I would favor map 104.
And if I can open up just a little bit more before we approve.
We're not approving
Or
tonight, by
just-
the way. Yeah, it's just direction.
Just for direction?
Yeah.
Okay. Before we give direction, I think if we do go to map 104, I think it's just pushing the district I represent, and it's shifting me away. That's the way I see it. I ran to represent my district, and I heard my residents, I heard their concerns. And when I see 104, I'm a little thrown off. I know we represent Downey as a whole, and I'm proud to be here with you guys and vote for items that will affect Downey as a whole. But when I see 104, I kind of see it as you shifting my district. And I think when I look at 101, I think it's a little more fair. It's every direction. Every district has been taken off a little bit. It's not about downtown. I just see that District 3 was taken off a little bit, 4, 5, 2, and 1 to create this new district. So if that's the direction my council colleagues have, I just wanted to express that first and foremost so you guys can see what I see as a shift of what I represent.
Well, and if I may, thank you, Councilmember Ortiz. If I may, as we look at, and I think we knew coming in, the creation of a 5th district was certainly going to be, to some degree, impacting all of us because that would be redrawn, and we would, out of the 4 current districts, make that 5th. And so I think if you really look at all of the maps that have been presented, certainly all of the districts are being touched in one way or the other. As the districts as we know them, to be able to create that 5th district. I think that, that's not something that we can necessarily get away from, but I do think that in looking at the data that was provided for each one of the maps, just looking at population age, household income, housing stats, it is very, it does touch on the population as a whole, and one of our speakers mentioned, are we leaving out, the disenfranchised or any disenfranchised neighborhoods or communities within a district? In looking at the data, it seems that it was done in a fairly balanced approach, knowing that each district would be impacted in some way or another.
I wouldn't see requesting any changes. I think from these 4 maps, there would be a good decision that is made. So in my opinion, not adjusting boundaries and going back and bringing it back, I would be ready to make a decision, be it on, some of the points that we've brought in the speakers as well. So I would just, in my opinion, don't need any changes that I'm requesting.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Councilmember Ortiz, map 1, I mean, if we're incorporating a 5th district, this is my personal opinion, it's going to eat into a lot of our district. Like for me, between Firestone, south of Firestone and north of Alameda, it does cut into the current district that I serve, and there are a lot of residents that I've been dealing with since I've been elected. So that's kind of a pain area for me, but I understand that either way, there's going to be a little bit of that in each of these maps, if we're making room for a 5th district. So unless there are additional comments, I will entertain a motion and a second to with given action.
I would like to make a motion to move forward with map 104 for our next public hearing as the map we would like to have better discussion and move forward with.
I would second that motion.
Okay, please vote.
The motion is approved with Councilmember Ortiz voting no.
Okay. Now's the time for public comment on agenda, consent calendar, and non-agenda items.
Oh, Mayor, if I can just briefly, just procedurally, of the next steps for this, before you move on to the next item.
Sorry, I jumped off. I'm
No,
reading off this script here. Thank you.
Yeah, no, just for residents who may be wondering how this goes forward. So what we tend to do is take that motion and we'll highlight 104 as kind of the council's focus map at this point. But the residents are still free to draw whatever they want. It's not a final decision until the ordinance is voted on. So.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation and thank you for the great reports.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Now's the time for public comment on agenda, consent calendar, and non-agenda items.
The City Council will now take public comment on agenda, consent calendar, and non-agenda items. If you did not receive a number card and wish to speak, please proceed to the back of the room to be issued a number card by city staff. We will be calling blue number cards for the public comment period. Before we begin the public comment period, we would like to remind members of the audience that the city's meeting rules contained in the Downey Municipal Code prohibit any conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. Copies of the meeting rules are located in the back of the chambers. Members of the audience and speakers who violate these rules and cause a disruption will receive one warning and then may be removed from the meeting. Violations of the rules of decorum for council meetings may also result in an administrative fine under the Municipal Code or citation for a misdemeanor under Penal Code Section 403. The City Council acknowledges the right of the public to address issues that are within the city's jurisdiction and invites the public to do so during the City Council meeting. However, this right must be balanced with the need of the City Council to conduct the public business in a fair and efficient manner, free from disruption or disturbance. We expect that everyone who participates in today's meeting, from the members of the council here on the dais, to staff, to the members of the public in attendance, do so with respect and dignity. Please refrain from using profanity, name-calling, or behaving in a way that disrupts this meeting. This includes yelling, whistling, booing, screaming, and any other outburst that disrupts or disturbs the meeting. Any conduct that interferes with or disrupts persons who are addressing the City Council. Any conduct that interferes with or disrupts council members while they are speaking. Any other conduct that disrupts, disturbs, or interferes with the orderly conduct of the meeting. And attacks of a personal nature on city staff or city council members that have no connection to agenda items or non-agenda items. We remind speakers that your comments must be addressed to the mayor and not to any other council member, city staff, or the audience.
City Clerk Duarte, did we receive any written public comment to be incorporated into the record?
Yes, Mayor, we did. We have written public comment from Fariba, and I'm sorry if I don't pronounce this correctly, but it's Hafezisade, who commented in support of the city not funding the YMCA with Measure S funds. Also from Breon Waters II, who is requesting a crossing guard at Unsworth Elementary due to traffic concerns. And Aaron Gatlin, who commented regarding a plaque honoring the carpenters presented to Richard Carpenter on April 2024. And he is requesting an update from the city.
Thank you. Is there a motion and a second to receive and file
So
written
moved.
public comment?
Second.
Please vote.
The motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you. City Clerk Duarte, how many speakers have taken our number?
We have 5 speakers, Mayor.
Thank you. Based on the number of speakers, each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the City Council. I remind all speakers that you must remain seated until your number is called. Speaker number 1, please come forward.
The six-pointed star on the flag of Israel is known as the Star of David. David is the greatest king in Israel's history. He wrote many of the Psalms. Tonight I am reading from Psalm 139, beginning with verse 13. In this psalm, David is speaking to God. For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the lowest parts of the earth. Your eyes saw my substance being yet unformed, and in your book they all were written, the days fashioned for me, when as yet there were none of them. The creation and development of a child in a mother's womb is the work of God. The Bible says we are made in the image and likeness of God. An abortion worker is destroying the work of God. One sinner destroys much good. God will not hold guiltless one who sheds innocent blood. An abortion is an act of violence which sheds the blood of the most innocent of us all. Here is a website for people involved in the abortion industry. abortionworker.com.
Thank you. Speaker number 2, please come forward. Thank you for your service, Mr. Squire.
Thank you. Lee Squire, Vietnam era veteran, Downey High School graduate, civil rights advocate. My generation is the generation who grew up during the civil rights movement and the Vietnam War. First of all, this is Mayor and City Council. Holocaust Remembrance Day was in January 2025, and I am saddened that there was no proclamation from the mayor honoring the Jews of January the 27th and my World War II veterans. Also, February is Black History Month, February 2025. I will do a presentation called Stand in the Schoolhouse Door. It took place at the University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Site of the stand at the schoolhouse door. Foster Auditorium is the site of the June 11, 1963 Stand in the Schoolhouse Door by Governor George C. Wallace in defiance of a court order requiring the University of Alabama to admit African-American students Vivian Malone and James Hood. President John F. Kennedy placed the Alabama National Guard under federal control to enforce the court order as Wallace refused to obey. Wallace then stepped aside and the students registered for class. That night, President John F. Kennedy went on national television to declare civil rights was no longer simply a legal issue, but a moral issue, and applied to the nation's sense of fairness. 1 week later, he submitted a comprehensive civil rights bill that became the foundation of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The Civil Rights Act was created by John F. Kennedy, was signed into law by President Johnson. That would not have happened had Kennedy not been assassinated in November of 1963. Those 2 black students were the symbol of George Wallace's racial hatred. He blocked all black students from going to any white schools in the state of Alabama. I wanted this brought out because when you're looking for the description of white racism, white supremacy, there was nothing more than what took place during the civil rights movement and those southern states, starting with the state of Alabama. I didn't do this presentation, and I want to present it as a matter of the public record. Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 3, please come forward.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, Mr. Bradley, staff, good evening. Mayor, recently we've heard a lot of rhetoric with regards to waste and fraud in government. The Government Accounting Office, the GAO, has indicated that between $250 billion and $530 billion have been wasted because of fraud in our government. It's unconscionable. I have a suggestion for both the federal and the state governments to help minimize waste. And the one way I'm suggesting is that they discontinue the funding of the California bullet train proposal. A little bit of backstory with regards to that. 2008, the people decided to put something on the agenda with regards to the rail line to build a bullet train going from LA to San Francisco. It was to be funded by state bonds, federal reserves, and also the cap and trade program from California. It was started, a segment of it was started between Bakersfield and Merced. It was proposed to be finished in 2025, and the cost estimated to build that project was supposed to be $30 billion. So we've now arrived at 2025, and where does it stand? Basically, the segment from Bakersfield to Merced has not been completed. The California State Budget Officer said that it's going to take another $7 billion to complete just that segment. And right now, the state has spent already $27 billion on that project. So with the 27 already there, the state wants another $7 billion to complete the segment there. And to complete the full project, there's an estimate of an additional $70 billion to complete the project. That to me is a complete waste of money. That money should be used for other sources that are more important than the finishing of the bullet train. Mr. Mayor, that ends my comments. I yield my remaining seconds back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Lacy. Speaker number 4, please come forward.
Good evening. I'm Breon Waters II, a parent, a parent of a first grader at Unsworth Elementary. Last December, I addressed the council regarding the critical safety issues at our school's crosswalks. And I'd like to thank Public Works, the Downey PD's traffic unit, and Councilmember Fermetta for hearing our concerns. Thanks to discussions with Matt Baumgartner, the Director of Public Works, Unsworth is slated to receive 2 additional stop signs and a stop bar next month, which is a positive first step. Today, we had motorcycle officers present during drop-offs and pickups, which directly made things less chaotic. They help prevent cars from parking inside crosswalks and obstructing paths in front of the school's entrance. I don't know if having motorcycle officers present during drop-offs and pickups is a permanent solution, but if it isn't, I'd like to urge the City Council to help expedite the hiring of a crossing guard after the stop sign observation study has been made. I've talked with All City Management Services, Inc., the subcontractor for Downey's crossing guards, to understand the costs involved. The hourly rate of a crossing guard in Downey is $18.50, with guards working a maximum of 3 hours daily, splitting between morning drop-offs and afternoon pickups. Annual cost for one guard is approximately $14,430. Remarkably, that cost of a crossing guard represents just 0.0119% of the $77.6 million allocated to public safety. With Downey's projected budget surplus of $1.4 million, funding a crossing guard is not only necessary but financially feasible. without impacting the resources allocated to our first responders. There are so many issues that students have to face that none of us adults had to go through when we were their age. Crossing to and from school should be the last thing a child has to worry about. Any and all solutions that make a reality are greatly appreciated. Thank you all for your time and for listening to our need to protect our students and community. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, Mayor, just quickly, I know that we are in the process of installing some stop signs around Unsworth Elementary. We do actually have a study process that we initiate as part of the installation of crossing guards. So once that the stop signs get installed, we'll look at the study and we'll see whether or not there's a justification for adding a crossing guard at that time. So that's forthcoming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Speaker number 5, please come forward.
Quick comment on the voting. Switching from our current system would alienate every voter in Downey by at least 50%. Because as it currently stands, I have 2 representatives that I can vote for. You would be taking one of those options away from me if you continue on with this spineless plan instead of standing up and holding your ground. Just a comment. You will be alienating, disenfranchising me by 50% on my voting rights. Okay, number 10, approval of police department contract for private jailer services. We shouldn't be approving any contracts with anybody until we have a guarantee that that service will allow ICE into the facility and help President Trump in operating the mass deportations of illegal aliens that are incarcerated. He should have access, they should have access to any facility that the city contracts with. Surely none of you would disagree with that. Surely you wouldn't disagree with that. Okay. Number 11, public health services contract with the County of Los Angeles for public health services. You should represent us better as far as public health goes. I mean, I haven't heard anybody complain about the chemtrails that are sprayed over us and the garbage they're spraying over our city. Not one. Do you even know there are chemtrails above us? Surely you see them, but nobody says a thing. They can't be good. What are they, spraying aluminum on us? Whatever. And also the contract with the county representative, Dr. Barbara Farrar, the fake doctor. She gets about $600,000 a year, $500,000 or $600,000 a year. She's not even a real doctor. But her daughter made money on the masks during the lockdowns. She got like $110,000 for masks. And all of you went along with it. You violated people's businesses. You violated people's rights. You wouldn't allow anybody into hospitals to see a dying relative. It's not forgotten, folks. You should not have any contract to do with that fake doctor and trusting the County of Los Angeles. It's just my opinion.
Is there a motion and a second to close public comment?
Make a motion to close public comment.
Second.
Sorted by the mayor. Now is the time for consent calendar items. Are there any council members that would like to remove or abstain from an item? Okay, now entertain a motion and a second. Public comment, for consent calendar items.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Please vote.
The consent calendar is approved unanimously.
Okay. There are two administrative reports this evening. The third report, item number 17, is being pulled by staff and will not be considered tonight. Administrative report, item number 16, overview of Downey's emergency response operations. So that's the City Council receive and file a report on Downey's emergency plans and operations. City Manager Bradley, is there a staff report for item number 16?
Yes, Mayor, we have our emergency preparedness manager here, Rakti Cloak, who will provide the presentation tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, Rakti.
Good evening. Good evening again, Mayor, City Council members, city staff, and members of the public. Thank you for having me here today. Every few times a year, I get to see everybody. Today, I have a chance to kind of provide an overview of Downey's emergency response operations. I think that with the recent fires, you know, a lot of residents are wondering, well, what does Downey do during an emergency? So I'd like to take this time to kind of share how we handle emergencies. A little backstory, emergency management really came to the forefront for everyone after 9/11 back in 2001. And it wasn't that emergency management just started that year. It was more that there was more of a national push for it. And so Downey and other cities nationwide follow the National Incident Management System. There are presidential directives, and essentially what it says is if we follow these series of process and protocols, Downey would be eligible for cost recovery funds. It also encourages the various levels of government to work together with partner agencies and pretty much so that we're speaking the same language and we understand each other. Downey also follows the standard emergency management system. So earlier I mentioned about the federal version, which is NIMS. NIMS actually was modeled after California's SIMS. And so they're very similar. I'm not going to go into all the details, but I will in the next few slides kind of share some of the key components of it. And essentially what these systems and process and protocols all encourages city government to do is so that we are behaving in a standardized method that you can see nationwide. And so this diagram, I think, is a really good representation of that. For most of us, or most of you guys, when an incident happens, no matter how small or large scale, you see police and fire, you know, attacking the incident. They are resolving the issue. And so they are in the field and they establish an incident command post. Now, if the incident was much larger and they think they need additional help, the city would then establish what we call an emergency operations center. And it's essentially just a central hub for key city staff to come together and strategize both short-term, long-term goals of how to address the situation. And they're thinking of the bigger picture. They're thinking about public information, how to get information to residents, what's going to happen in the next few days, next few weeks, years. And they're thinking about cost recovery. How do we rebuild our city for the coming future? The city's other role is to also recognize what is our gaps and make sure we relay those requests and information to the county. And the county is doing the same thing. They're gathering information for all cities within the county and pushing it up to the state. And by following this method of information flow and requesting resources, we're being efficient because you don't want to ask for resources coming from the state when it could just be from your city next door. And so that's essentially what NIMS and SIMS is, getting us to think about how we can be self-sufficient, but then knowing when we need to ask for assistance. And so some of the ways that the city does that is through emergency proclamations. Sometimes we've saw this happen during COVID, shortly after COVID happened, the city proclaimed an emergency, and the county proclaimed, and the state and the federal government. And what that really does is it allows the jurisdiction, so in this case Downey, create emergency regulations. Maybe if we had to, implement curfews, new purchasing policies to address the issues. But to be honest, most importantly, it helps open up funding sources for cost recovery when we have to rebuild. This is an org chart we should all memorize. I kid you. But this is actually a really good org chart. Sometimes I think during disasters, in that chaos, believe it or not, a lot of your first responders are organized based on this organizational structure. And that same organizational structure happens also in the city's emergency operations center, and at the county, and at the state, and at the federal government. And that's what I go back to, having a standardized method to address emergencies. Now, helping us kind of guide us in the whole emergency response is a slew of different emergency plans. The city has a guide of how staff will operate in the EOC, how staff will establish an emergency shelter, how staff will open a medical point of dispensing site, which is a site to help distribute medication during a public health emergency. We actually have a major event hotline. This is a designated phone number that we could activate for emergencies so residents can call in if they're trying to get additional information. We used this heavily during COVID. There was one phone number that you called at any time related to COVID, and we had staff answer that. We also have policies about when we would activate a cooling center when there's extreme heat. Residents that may not have AC and just need to get into a cool area just for safety. We have policies of how staff will send out mass notifications to residents. And just recently, we just approved, literally just seconds ago, or minutes ago, the hazard mitigation plan, which is a thesis about all the potential hazards that could impact the city of Downey and the long-term goals the city will take to try to mitigate some of those hazards and vulnerabilities. In alignment with those plans is we train staff to do all those various functions I mentioned. But I think what probably speaks more to the residents is our community emergency response teams training, which is a federal curriculum that's about 20 hours. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next few slides. But before that, I want you to know that during an emergency, you can expect that you will receive notification. Now, I do want to explain a little bit. Downey Alerts is actually a voluntary registration system, meaning you have to opt in. So as it stands right now, we have just a little over 4,000 residents who signed up. But we were able to pull from the 911 database landlines. So that's a little less than 20,000. To sign up for Downey Alerts, if you want to get emergency alerts, you can go on our website, or you can text Downey Alerts to the number 888-777. But you're thinking 24,000 residents only? For the opt-in. During a catastrophic, City of Downey actually has a memorandum agreement with FEMA to access their wireless emergency alert. You're most aware of this because you hear it as the Amber Alerts or the Silver Alerts. Those are examples of wireless emergency alerts capability. We have that as well. So in a catastrophic incident and we need to send out messages to all cell phones within our city limits, we do have that capability. And during, for the most part, you can also get emergency notifications through our social media, Instagram, Facebook, and city website. Now, there may be instances, if it's very dire, that we could possibly also do door-to-door notifications for evacuations or other extreme measures. Those would be really dire moments there, as we've seen in recent fires in Eaton and Palisades. So how do you get involved? How do you get more information, be better prepared? You can visit our website, city's website. I provide the link there. You can also, ignore the us.org. Cross that off. It ends at preparedness. I apologize. Or you can visit FEMA's website, ready.gov. Now, if you're gung-ho and you love this presentation and you'd like to see me for a weekend, please come to our community emergency response training. Our next training is April 4th. It's Friday night, 6:30 p.m. to 9, and then full day Saturday and Sunday. It's a great training. We cover light search and rescue, disaster medical operations, how CERT's organized, which is similar to that org chart I showed you guys earlier, and fire suppression. So the goal of this training is really to help prepare you to help your family and your neighbors. And that's the true goal. Because at the end of the day, the city only has so many resources. So if you can help yourself, you're helping the city too. And if you can help your neighbor, that's just one more step. We also have folks who loves the training and like to stick around, so they join our Downey CERT team, and we have trained them on how to help us set up an emergency shelter, how to staff the medical points of dispensing site, and actually receive EOC training. So those are some of the things that you can do to be more involved. But I can't stress enough, if you're not prepared, you will not come and help. So please make a plan, build your kit, stay informed, get involved. I left at the back near the agenda table the pamphlets you can use to create your own emergency plan. Please feel free to take those or several and pass them out to loved ones and friends. If you have any further questions, that's my contact. Or if you have questions now, I could take those too.
Yeah, thank you, Rakti. I appreciate sharing that information. If anybody's curious about the CERT training, I would highly recommend it. I went through the CERT program training about 7-8 years ago, and finished it. It was a great experience, and I know Commissioner Uva is pretty involved with CERT. She liked the training so much, she stayed on and she volunteers. So,
Yes.
I just have one question, and then I'll pass it on to my colleagues. For city staff, how are we going about advertising registration for Downey Alerts?
So we do advertise it on Orbits, the Parks and Recreation flyers. We also have it on the first page of our city website, tab there. And anytime when at least CERT is present at the city events, we always advertise it there, allowing people we can show them how to opt in with their cell phone. And we've also taken manual registrations as well. So those are some of the ways we try to advertise both. Oh, and I apologize. We also advertise on our social media, Instagram and Facebook.
Thank you, Rakti. Do any council members have any comments or questions for Rakti?
I do. You know I would. You know I would jump right over it.
We'll wait.
Rakti, thank you. Thank you for the great job you do for the city of Downey. I do want to give a shout out to you, and of course our fire department. But certainly Downey is very fortunate to have you in this position, to have an emergency manager for this. And I also want to emphasize how critical it is to do outreach and to perhaps put on our social media platforms, having our population opt in to these Downey alerts, because as we've been discussing with the recent wildfires and then our Christmas Eve historic power outage and water outage, a lot of our residents went to the various social media groups in the community. And so we need to, it's incumbent upon us to train and educate our community. And we have such an active, everywhere these days is social media. To be able to have this information ongoing so that the public can opt in, because otherwise the public doesn't know, and if they don't know, then we've got that problem. I also want to stress the importance for our community. Once again, you mentioned being prepared and having a kit. I do want to go perhaps as far as saying, depending on the medical needs of members of our community, having an emergency generator is really important too, because again, with any disaster and power outage, yes, hospitals are equipped to have emergency generators, but the city is not going to be out there in every home and every household providing these services. So emergency generators have become very affordable, and I would like to encourage our community members to acquire that, particularly if there are specific medical needs within their household, and they need to maintain those. But thank you, Rakdi, thank you for the work you're doing. And if I may say, 20 years ago, this was a very different story for our city. I remember probably about 20 years ago, there was a situation in the community where there was, some contaminant, and we were not, the community was up in arms because there was we couldn't use our water, and there was not the communication. Obviously, social media was very different, but 20 years later, we've come really far, and it is important for the community to know that we as a council are thinking top of mind of emergency operations plans. You're here. And everybody is engaged. So we just need to engage our residents so that they are better informed of what we have. But I think we need to do a better job at training them and educating them and informing them. But thank you for a great presentation.
I do have a question for you. During the Christmas Eve incident, did we send a Downey alert?
We did send it out.
We did. And then when also the notification for LA fires, when majority of Downey received a notice of evacuation, did we send a Downey alerts for that one too?
That was not ours. That was actually a mistake by the
But what
county.
I'm saying is,
We did send out one that said that does not
apply.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So we did send one after.
Yes.
Okay, cool. And thank you so much for the presentation. I do agree we need to do a better job at 4,000 of how many residents we have. It's a pretty low number. Hopefully you can stop by the neighborhood watch block captain meeting and promote that, so our block captains, so they can promote it to their neighbors as well.
The reason why that actually has changed over the years, everybody used to have a landline in their house, and we used to be able to get the landline information to all the homes from the different service providers. But over the years, everybody's transitioned away from landlines, and there's a privacy issue with cell phones. And so now we need people to actually opt in with their numbers so that we can get a hold of them through their cell phone, and that's when you get those messages from us. But in a dire emergency situation, we can use, as Raki mentioned, the cell phone towers to get you a message at your home too. So. But it's important for folks in the community to know that we need that cell phone information so that we can give you information.
Yeah, and I think we will hopefully put this information more out there through our social media platforms, because there's certainly Facebook groups within the community that are 17, 18, 20,000 people that are not related to the city, and that's where our community members immediately go to gather information, and sometimes it is the wrong information. So thanks, Rakti.
If I could just provide additional feedback, I think that is a great point to be made. So our public information coordinator, Axel, he's actually directly discussing with those groups. So when he sees communication actively engaging, then he direct messages them, I should say, to say, this is the tools that are available to you, and then shares the information. So then those folks because sometimes even when we put on social media, which we've worked with Radke to increase that and also take advantage of change in weather, let's say the sandbags distribution, we attach that information. This is Downey alerts. Not everyone sees it. So we're trying to go to these groups directly to share the information so then they can continue to disperse it with their members as well.
Thank you. No, and I think it's important because we did have some great learnings from the power outage in December. And I think that, it's twofold. Yes, the local government is here to protect the residents and to provide certain things, but it's also residents. They need to do their part and be prepared and be informed of what is available, because it's not always us doing it for them. So, thanks.
Thank you for the report. It's very detailed. And I was just speaking to our city manager today because I have a smart 911 update. And I'm like, do we use that? No, we don't. That was something that we had maybe in the past. But as I look at the number that you put on here, the screen, I'm going to spread that as well. This last number, it was a Downey alert, and in September, somebody hit a gas line, so the fire department let us know, and the Barbara Riley Center is open for cooling when we had the heavy heat wave going on, so I will spread the word as well. I hope we all can. On the report, I just had one question. In the report, it showed the steering committee participants, and it's a good wide variety. And 2 cities were noted in here, one from Norwalk, one from Paramount. Were many of the cities invited, or those in particular were asked to come on for some knowledge that they had? Why these 2 particular cities in part of ours?
What you're referring to is our hazard mitigation plan. And for that one, we actually invited other cities. It's just a matter of who actually has the availability during that meeting. So those 2 cities happened to come. But we did ask the surrounding cities that touched our borders.
Okay.
So it's just because they share the borders with us, so like the likelihood that they also will share the same burden as us if we were to face those disasters, and that's why they were selected. But I will actually note, there is an individual there, which is our disaster management area coordinator. This is an individual who represents the 25 cities of Area E. So we're part of Area E, and so even though we didn't have all 25 cities involved with us, that individual helps to represent and kind of share insight because he works with all the 25 cities constantly. So indirect representation, if you will.
I think I'm on an older part of this agenda, but thank you for that.
And one last question for me, Rakti. How often can you speak very quickly about the group that meets? Is it on a quarterly basis? Can you speak to that?
Yes, we do have what we call Downey Resiliency Group, made up of various stakeholders in the community, hospitals, the school district, city staff and such. They meet once every 2 months.
Now, is the public invited to attend, or are these community stakeholders to discuss particular emergency operations plans?
More of an advisory group. Okay. They were selected because they represent the specific industry or field, such as the schools and whatnot. So it's not generally open to the general public. And it's an opportunity for the different agencies to share about their preparedness efforts and then collaborate if we see any opportunities then.
Thank you, Rakti. Any other comments or questions? Okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll now entertain a motion and second to receive and file the report.
So moved.
Second.
Please vote.
The motion is approved unanimously.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 18, update on City of Downey water system. The City Council receive and file an update on the city's water system. And 2, direct staff to proceed with conducting a water rate analysis and returning to a future City Council meeting with rate increase options for consideration to adequately fund the water system operations and its capital improvement program. City Manager Bradley, is there a staff report for item number 18?
Yes, Mayor, we have our Public Works Director, Mr. Baumgartner, that will provide the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm happy to present an update on the Downey water system tonight. Following the Christmas Eve outage, as well as the start of the fires on January 6th, at its first meeting following that, January 14th, our council directed staff to return to council with an update report on the condition of the water system. I want to provide you with a little bit of background on our system. We currently have roughly 20,000 customers at an 80-20 split, residential commercial. So that equates to roughly 16,000 residential customers and 4,000 commercial customers. Water is produced through 20 wells and directly distributed through a network of 258 miles of pipes. Our average demand can be met by pumping from 9 of these wells at a rate of 13,000 gallons per minute. Downey is unique in that it doesn't require any kind of disinfection and hasn't required treatment over the years, and this is what allows us to be able to pump the water and put it right into the system. This also allows us to keep the cost of operating the system at a reasonable level. The water system is managed by 28 full-time employees, 19 of which are our field staff that operate and maintain the wells, the distribution system, and oversee our water quality. But we also have 9 engineering and admin staff that focus on planning, engineering, compliance, and customer service. I wanted to give you a picture of the water system finances, and I'm starting with looking at fiscal year 2015, which is a point 10 years ago. This also represents the last time there was a rate increase. So it's a good point to start to kind of take a look at our revenues. Moving forward up to today, our revenues have stayed roughly flat. It's gone a little bit above and a little bit below, but the trend line for revenues is about $18 million a year. Our expenses, however, have gone up, which is to be expected with CPI, just material costs, labor going up, all of those types of things that have really brought the number up pretty close to the same level. About $17.5 million this year is what we're projecting for expenditures. So back in 10 years ago, we had a surplus of roughly $5 million, and that surplus has gone down to about $500,000 with what we project this year. That annual surplus each year is added to our fund balance, and this is what allows us to work on CIP projects and any unexpected costs that come along during the year. At its current projection, if we continue with that linear progression out to next year, we anticipate that our surplus will be close to zero. Taking a look at our emergency preparedness of the system, and just to give you a little bit of overview, the electrical power delivered to the city is done by SEE and falls into 3 geographical grids. Our groundwater extraction wells are distributed throughout the city as well as those grids. Not all of our wells run at the same time, and we have 9 wells, as I was saying before, that can provide sufficient water at normal pressure during an emergency. Historically, our outages have been isolated to just small portions of the system within 1 grid or within 2 grids, but just small areas. Any wells that have been compromised in the past are balanced by turning on wells in unaffected areas. What was unique about the 24th of December was it hit significant portions of 2 grids and it impacted many wells. However, over a 3-hour period, our staff turned on wells in unaffected areas just like we would in the past. We backed up a couple of the larger wells with generators, and as SEE was able to restore some of the power, we were able to restart wells. Within 3 hours, we were able to provide sufficient coverage to the entire city and restored pressure to the system by operating 9 wells. And as the night went on, as more power was restored, we were able to take the wells off of generators, and we had even more wells running at that point. So we're able to maintain good pressure after that 3-hour period. Looking at our overall preparedness, how is the city prepared for future outages that might last longer? In the last 2 months, staff has rented backup generators for powering up its wells during outages. In addition to that, the city has emergency connections with MWD to import water over a more sustained, prolonged outage. Staff has not had to open these connections in the past, but is currently reestablishing those protocols with MWD to use them in the event of a longer event, such as an earthquake hitting the city, and having that ability to provide uninterrupted water from MWD. Staff is also currently exploring the purchase of used generators and starting to take off some of those rental units so that we can control some of the current costs. Looking at the long-term, planning for permanent generators is being considered at 9 of our well sites. And we've been fortunate to work with Cal OES, the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, on a mitigation grant that around $4 million. We've had good feedback from Cal OES, who is also actually helping us with the grant to ensure our success with that. We expect, according to them, if we're successful, that the process will take about 18 to 24 months in securing these funds and beginning the process of installing permanent backup at these 9 well sites. One other thing I wanted to mention with tonight's adoption of the hazard mitigation plan, this is one of the things that we actually have to have in place in order to receive these funds. So it was an important action that our city council took tonight. And the work that's been done by RACD and the community on working on that is a really important plan. With that, staff believes that there's currently sufficient resources in place to maintain water pressure during an emergency. One of the questions we get too is how do we handle our fire suppression, and is there a backup plan for that, considering if there's hydrant pressure is low? One thing that I had the opportunity to do is work with our deputy director, our utilities manager, and our chief to review what options the fire department has in an emergency like this. In working with Chief Hildebrand, what we've determined, what he has laid out is that our first options would be accessing reclaimed water hydrants that are located in town. Those are not connected to our particular system, so he has that option, as well as adjacent city and LA County fire hydrants. And so those would be our first options for filling up our fire engines. As secondary options, though, it's important to note that we have almost 17.5 million gallons available, either at the water reservoir at the yard or lakes that are located at Wilderness Park and the Rio Hondo Golf Club. And these can be pumped using apparatus on the fire engines directly. With that, and reviewing this with Chief Hildebrand, we believe there are protocols in place to provide sufficient fire suppression in a prolonged outage. Taking a little bit closer look at our financial outlook, I've moved on beyond the first 10 years and into the next 5 years, trying to project what do the costs look like. Again, when taking out all the way out into next year, we believe our surplus is going down to zero, with expenses continuing on that trend line and our revenues staying pretty flat at 18 million. But we still have ongoing needs to take care of CIP projects, continuing to upgrade our water mains, and importantly, continuing to rehabilitate our wells. We're also looking 5 years down the road, once we have a treatment system in place for PFAS, having an annual cost of roughly $4 million on top of the $6 million for the CIP project that we will need every year going forward to maintain the system. What I'm showing there right now, if you just look at that red line, without the CIP, the annual budget gap would grow to 1.75 million. And then on top of that, there's an additional $10 million that we would have with the CIP and treatment system operational costs. Looking at a case for a water rate analysis, as I was saying, the annual budget surplus is going to be close to zero starting next year. And at that point, we're no longer able to add to the fund balance. Right now, our fund balance sits at about $3 million at the end of this fiscal year. Going forward, we're looking at about $450,000 annual budget gap with steady increasing costs and flat annual revenues. However, as I was saying before, our CIP needs to continue to address our infrastructure, and it's important to continue to invest in our backup generation at our well sites. Taking a look at our water rates, just to give you an idea of how we compare to the region. Downey is significantly lower than the rest of the water agencies in this region. Looking at a bi-monthly basis and an average usage, it's a little over $52 for a 2-month period. This is 24% lower than the next lowest agency. It's 111% lower than the average of the agencies, and it's 264% lower than the most expensive agency. So looking at our next steps and considering that our revenues are no longer projected to keep up with operational and capital expenditures, considering that Downey and communities in the region are exposed to significant emergencies like the fires we just experienced and earthquakes, our water system needs to comply with emerging PFAS water standard over the next 4 years. The city must invest in water infrastructure to remain resilient. Our recommendation at this point is to proceed with the water rate analysis and return to City Council at a future meeting to consider rate adjustment options and potentially initiate a Prop 218 process. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have tonight.
Thank you, Director Baumgartner. I do have a couple of questions before I turn it over to my colleagues.
Of course.
When you show 20,000 customers, does that include individual residences and apartment, condo, and townhome complexes, or are they considered one?
There'll be several meters that are served. So one larger unit would be broken up into multiple clusters, multiple meters. Yeah, so it's considered services, the number of services that we have. So yes, that would be broken into that number.
So I think the question is, if there's an apartment complex, and there's 10 people that live there, is it 10 accounts or is it one? Is that what you're asking?
Correct.
It's just one, correct?
Right,
Yeah.
it's 1 meter? Okay. Is it possible to get a list of the regional cities referenced in the survey?
Yeah, I'll pull that data together. I don't have that with me tonight, but yes, that's something that we could.
Thank you. Colleagues?
I do. I have a question. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Matt, for this report. Page 4 on the report is we're talking about the city fire hydrants, and I would like to ask, how often are we planning to inspect our fire hydrants to ensure that they are working properly?
I think we actually inspected pretty well. Matt, go ahead if you have.
Yeah, we do inspect some of those throughout the year. We also address those as part of CIP upgrades. So that's often the time when we're addressing and upgrading any of the fire hydrants as well. So those are part of 2 programs where we're taking a look at those fire hydrants.
Okay, and so how is there some type of a policy you have in terms of they're inspected semi-annually, annually? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not aware of a particular policy in terms of we have to do a certain number in a year. I think it's kind of based on our experience with a particular area, how old those hydrants are, and then again, that's usually part of an upgrade. But we'll go through and we'll check those during those times.
And we do have an inventory of
Absolutely.
Of course, the hydrants and how old they are.
That's
right?
correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I just, I want to further explain to our residents. I know we're going to be looking at this assessment, looking at the CIPs we have, seeing that the last rate increase that was done to the water was 10 years ago. But again, highlighting why now, and yes, the costs are not keeping up, and you just showed us the bar graph. From 5 million surplus, we have now 500,000, and the way it's going, we will be at 0. So, but I just think that we have to be, communication is everything, and for our residents, this may come as a very negative surprise. We know what we have to do in order to maintain resiliency in our city, and water is important, obviously. But I think we really need to make sure our residents know the whys and really understand. I don't know how many are watching this presentation on YouTube. Certainly, we don't have hardly any here in the audience, but I think it's important because. Keeping up with the infrastructure of this community is critical, and we know that. But how do we make sure we tell that to the residents?
When we go through rate cases, usually there's a process of doing some outreach, workshops, things of that nature, so we can invite the community in and let them ask questions, see what the data is, show them what the needs are and what the approach is. So that they have an opportunity to be a part of the process and can at least ask questions and familiarize themselves with what's being proposed. So that's definitely something that we understand and that we will make sure we take action on. So,
do we know when the last previous rate increase was prior to 2015-16?
Yeah, so the increase cycle, the 5-year cycle, was put into place in fiscal year 2011-2012. Prior to that, it was 16 years.
Wow.
So roughly over the last 25 to 30 years, we basically just had that one cycle in there, and from 2011 to 2016. So.
I appreciated the sliding scale, the chart that shows how we were running, how we were keeping it low, But now the increased cost, just like in construction, that's doubled. Everyone knows the increase, and we can project where we're going to be, and we certainly don't want to be short. But I'm a tactile person, and I mentioned before, to include in the water bill something or a word or a brochure to look. People would prefer to look when I could see getting their bill. And something like that showing the financial impact, where we are now, we haven't had that rate, something simple, but where they see the chart and they get it. People can read a graph chart or something like that and show why we were low before, but now where we're going to be. And I'd like to see if we could maybe address that and put it in the water bill. If we develop something that could be an insert.
Definitely an option, but the problem is, I think something like only 55% of our customers actually get a bill. Most of them are doing auto pay and other things.
Okay, well, then put it in the auto pay as an attachment or something,
the times have changed a little bit on how some of the stuff works. But I hear your concern and thought on this.
Also, I want to thank you for giving a lot of information here. We knew how many wells we had, but it was new to me to know that 9 run the system, the magic number.
Yeah, 9 is what's needed to run it in an emergency. We typically cycle in and out up to maybe 12 to 14 in a day, because you don't want to be, 9 is running them full blast in an emergency, but typically we throttle some of those down, and we're running 12 to 14. And then throughout the year, we also turn some off for 6 months at a time to give them a rest. So that's kind of the process. We use all 20 of the wells throughout the year.
It certainly makes sense to, and I think the residents would agree, to have for the basic minimum on 9 generators for those wells. I mean, we're paying already on the rental, it looks like 1.1 million just on a rental. So hopefully the application process will go through, that we can get our generators, and most of us are in agreement with that. So thank you.
One question, you said the 5-year schedule. Was this supposed to be revisited in 2021?
I can't speak
so this is that's an interesting question. And actually, the one thing that really, the best practice in this is that you actually do a rate case every 5 years. And so when you do the rate case, the rate increases are usually set for a 5-year period, and then you have to do another one at the end of it. So every 5 years you're doing an update on your rates. The reason to do that is because it allows for a little increase each year to keep track with inflation. When you wait for these long periods of time to actually do that rate case, you end up with a pretty large increase because you haven't done anything to address inflation and other cost increases for a long period of time. And so all of a sudden you're doing a large increase, and that makes everybody upset and trying to figure out, how do we deal with that? So really the best practice is to do these things on a regular basis so that you get a little increase each year and you don't have these large increases which create concern for our residents. And of course, trying to budget and those kinds of things get to be difficult for folks when they see these, inconsistent increases every few years.
Right. Okay. Any other questions or comments? We'll now entertain a motion and a second to
So moved.
well, there has to be an action. To go ahead and move forward with a rate analysis. So that's the motion. You want to go ahead and repeat those?
One last thing I wanted to add, excuse me, is the importance of detailing, once again, for our residents, where this rate increase, right? Really breaking it down as far as where it will be going. For sake of, everybody wants transparency these days, and wanting to make sure that they know where a rate increase in the near future, how it's going to be broken down.
So we definitely will look at all the expense categories, what are the cost centers that we need to fund, and provide clear information about what that's for. Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, and thank you for all the hard work, Matt. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so, and again, there was a motion and a second. And do we need to clarify the action there?
Yes, I think for the record, Mayor, it would be helpful to clarify just exactly what the motion encompasses. I believe you stated it before, but
Okay.
there have been some comments in the interim.
I will now entertain a motion and a second for staff to come back with a rate analysis.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
The motion is approved unanimously.
Okay, thank you, Director Baumgartner.
Thank you.
This city council meeting is now adjourned in the memory of Fire Captain Mark Eads, 62, 21-year veteran of the Kings County Fire Department who passed away in the line of duty while responding to a structure fire call in Avenel, California. Fire Captain Rebecca Marodi, 49, 31-year veteran of CAL FIRE who passed away from injuries sustained during an attack at home. And Airman Basic Breon Teal Scott, 27, United States Air Force, member of the 37th Security Forces Squadron, who was killed during a shooting near the Kirtland Air Force Base in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Moment of silence. The time is now 8:55. This meeting is adjourned.
Well done.